acting in various ways of various scales of sociability. So, and again, like I said, New York is fantastic for this because as soon as some space was given over, then all types of different types of activities and events began to take place. Things that we couldn't plan for or suggest, but simply by creating that space was given over to local citizens. Oddly enough, also, the most rare user group in Times Square, people that actually live in New York City, also began to spend time there. If you ask any local New Yorker, the one place that they will always avoid prior to this is certainly 42nd Street and Broadway. That's changing. So that's been a really big success. I mean, I think that to do it as quickly as New York has done, taking this policy, basically what they've done is they haven't even written that policy. They have the Plan YC vision, and rather than writing something down, they've just gone out and tested it and tried it, and are now reevaluating it with our help and others to try to see how that can be tweaked and changed and improved for hopefully some sort of final implementation. Another quick story I'll tell is about Mexico City, a very different animal. Rather than the specific pilot projects that we were given in different boroughs, the idea in Mexico City was to create one bicycle system for the whole city, the Mexico City model. So Mexico City is an interesting place on several levels, but I just point out a few things. One thing is that almost all of the streets in the city are actually neighborhood streets. And so what that means is that you have these large boulevards that you can see there that cut through different districts and neighborhoods. But a majority of the streets are actually not that heavily trafficked and mostly used for local transport. Mexico City, also a huge place, a little bit larger than New York City, about twice the size. And there again is little medieval Copenhagen showing up as a blip on the screen just to give you a sense. But when we were charged with creating this bicycle strategy, it was never a concept of bicycling as an ends, but basically as a means to create a better city. There's a whole lot of issues in a place like Mexico, in a city like Mexico City, that can be improved through these type of interventions. So again, as we've been talking about, we utilized best practice, a lot of information from Copenhagen and from other cities in the world, but created a strategy that was very much rooted in the local context of the city. And it was a true collaborative effort, as in New York City. There's a lot of different actors and stakeholders that need to participate in this. So in this case, we collaborated with university partners, city officials, NGOs. We brought in different experts, Gil being one key additional expert. A lot of different people had their say in creating this overall vision for the city. And then what we needed to do is try to customize this strategy for different user groups. So after that vision was made, there needed to be a strategy that could be used by city officials. There needed to be a toolbox that could be understood and implemented at different levels of regional and local government. And a very difficult aspect of this was trying to also change the culture of the city. So that culture I speak about is unique in the sense that people commute 2.5 hours a day on average in Mexico City. And oddly enough, for being a low middle income country, Mexico also has the second highest density of obesity in the world, just behind the United States. So this concept of what the city can be for its people was actually quite interesting. I was working both in New York and Mexico City, sort of overlapping at a certain point. And in this concept of, to show this again, this concept of using the city for leisure was something that people in Mexico City couldn't really understand. I showed them pictures of people bicycling in Copenhagen, and they said, why would you spend your time doing that, especially in that horrible weather? So this leisure time concept wasn't really prevalent, and you can see if people are working full days and commuting up to 5 hours a day, leisure isn't really something that is part of the city life.
Oh no.
So we needed to address this, and we'll see about leisure in a different way. We'll have to be careful with the people from Mexico in the building. But basically what I mean by that is that our strategies had to incorporate a totally different type of user in Mexico City than they did in New York City. So I'll just give you a little bit of a quick slideshow of what the city looks like. It's a beautiful place, fantastic in a lot of ways. You know, these wide boulevards that cut through the center of town are typically pretty congested with traffic. The sidewalks in certain places are also really congested. Some sidewalks disappear completely and don't really allow people to pass. And it creates a really difficult situation for people with disabilities or any type of wheeled individuals. So rather than going on the sidewalk, people are forced out into the street. And people with canes, people in wheelchairs, baby carriages are always forced into different awkward positions trying to use the city. There is, to some extent, a bicycle culture. Actually, Mexico City has implemented some bicycle lanes over the last 5 years. And of course, it's a huge place. Trying to pinpoint and describe Mexico City with 1 or 2 images is impossible. But there's pedestrianized streets as well, and you know, more quiet type of European type corner streets also. So with all that in mind, and again, we were charged with trying to create a strategy that could work throughout the entire city. An incredibly diverse, incredibly large, incredibly interesting place. So looking at different categories, our type of implementation needed to be robust enough to accommodate these different streets. And so we created a toolbox which pointed out some different elements in terms of the width of bicycle lanes, again taking a bit of a Copenhagen model, but needing to apply it to the conditions of Mexico City. The curbs needed to be high enough so vehicles couldn't drive over them, or else they would. Using something that maybe you've seen also from Melbourne, being able to designate cycle lanes without needing to take up all of the drainage infrastructure is something that we've also suggested for Mexico City. We talked a lot about crossings and safety, and how these you know, these tools could be used in a variety of different settings in the city. Just a couple shots of that, and then we also made some strategies for parking. And this is a huge project. Just giving you a lot of the highlights here, and tried to just create a few ideas of how things might change over time. Some short images there. So I'm getting the signal to stop, and that's perfect because we're there. But basically, I hope we can have a discussion about some of these issues. But this is just sort of a summary of our experience. In the case of New York and Mexico City, we can see that these public realm projects have really captured the imagination of elected politicians. We needed to do work at a breakneck pace in Mexico City as well, because the mayor understands there that these type of improvements are vital to his legacy and that of his cabinet. So this sense of urgency means that projects are really replacing a lot of written policy. Things are getting tested and tried in real time at scale of 1-to-1 rather than writing them down. And there's advantages and disadvantages of that in terms of trying to get it right and trying to get it done quickly. But in both cases, there's a change of mindset that needs to happen. And that change of mindset varies greatly, whether you're talking about high-income countries, EU countries in the US or other places. This type of healthy, active city is more about new leisure activities, it's more about well-being, it's more about a layer of health that is about leisure, it's about free time. And in low-income countries, it's more about social inclusivity, it's about mobility, and it's still about trying to make everyday activities more and more accessible for a wider population to try to bring down obesity and time spent commuting. So these are two examples. We're moving there, but thanks.
Thank you very much, Jeff.